How gorgeous are these? I like starting my weeks off with getting some fresh flowers when I can. Sometimes it can be a little slim pickings when you're balling on a budget, but I saw these snapdragons for $8 and I thought that they were really nice. Happy Monday, welcome back to the channel. I need a matcha. I just got this new matcha tin. It's called Everyday Matcha. And this was recommended to me first by an article that I read on like the best matchas, like ranking best matchas. And then I was at a friend's boat birthday party. I was asking around for matcha recommendations and this girl was like, oh, Everyday Matcha. It's at PCC, which is like a really common grocery store in Seattle. I was thinking that I would never find an affordable matcha at PCC because frankly, their prices are typically crazy, but this was only $10 and there's a good amount of product in here. I've always used bags of matcha and this just feels a little bit more legitimate. It is sourced from Kirishima Mountain, Japan. So we love. Today's video is really going to be just kind of like a writing update, catching you up on how writing has been going, feeling, etc. I feel like we're kind of overdue for that. A lot has been happening on the writing front and I've been a little bit quiet about it. I feel like I haven't been sharing as much the last couple months, which I'm actually planning to do a whole sit down video on Patreon this month, talking about why I took like a bit of a temporary step back from YouTube. But yeah, a lot has been happening on the writing front. If you guys saw my most recent vlog, it was me in Minnesota visiting my wonderful friend Alyssa in the books on authortube. And we did a ton of writing during that trip. Hold on, I gotta sift this. I like can't sift matcha and talk to you at the same time. My brain is like trying to process two things at once. Okay, honestly, I could probably use a little bit more than that. We're going in with a second scoop. I think it's a 2-scoop kind of day. There she is. Look at that color. We love. And I want to talk specifically about the way that I was feeling about my writing during that time, because if you guys saw the Minnesota vlog, there was a clip in the middle right after we went to Barnes & Noble where my energy was just like off the walls. Like, feel like I had practically an out-of-body experience. And I wanted to talk a little bit about what that was because it was actually really interesting and something that has never really happened to me in my writing journey so far. I remember during that writing session saying to Alyssa, I need to keep writing because I want to know what happens, which was frankly a pretty bizarre experience because I do know what happens. Like, this book is thoroughly outlined. Nothing that's going to happen is a surprise to me, you know? Quick whisking moment. But I think what I really experienced then was a separation between myself as the author and the book, where for the first time, my hand as the author kind of disappeared. And it's so hard to put into words because I was still very consciously aware of what I was putting on the page and I was thinking through what I was putting on the page. It's not like I stopped consciously thinking about the book, which is what I would normally interpret oh, I disappeared as the author to mean. I was still very aware of everything that I was putting on the page and all the decisions that I was making. But at the same time, I do feel like I disappeared as the author force. I was just really along for the ride and really viewing the book as its own experience and adventure rather than just something that I was working on. I don't know, it was really bizarre. It was really bizarre. And I also just experienced this really intensive euphoria that like, don't even know where to begin in terms of processing that. I just felt this like full body and soul euphoria of just like excitement, pure unadulterated excitement that wasn't marked by fear, that wasn't marked by insecurity. It was just this feeling of just like love and fulfillment from the process and the project. And even now I'm struggling to put into words what that experience was like, but I think it's a landmark new feeling in my writing journey. I mean, who knows? Maybe I did really experience that like intensive euphoria when I was writing as a teenager. Honestly, I wouldn't be that surprised if I did, because when you're younger, your inner critic is not quite as developed. Though I will say, I feel like I've had an inner critic for a long time. Not just with writing, I think just in general, as a kid and a teenager, I was much harder on myself than is normal and just like much more aware of my perception, like how I was being perceived than a normal kid. which is interesting. Lots to psychoanalyze there, I think. But yeah, it was this really intensive experience. And like I talked about in that vlog, I think it was a perfect storm of reasons that happened. But I don't know whether or not it's something that I'll continue to experience throughout working on this project, or if that was like a flash in the pan, lightning in a bottle moment. But I do think it was cool to see that feeling that way is possible. The power of creating something like a book with your own hands and like the emotional intensity of that experience, I think is so interesting and sort of unique. Something that you can only really experience when you're working on like a long creative project that you're putting so much of yourself into. The emotional investment and the emotional fulfillment that I feel from working on it is just unparalleled. And I think that that's what's making writing feel so magical right now, is just being so aware of that fulfillment and that emotional intensity of the process and the experience of writing a book, you know? This draft, despite having planned it pretty meticulously, has just continually surprised me in a ton of ways. It surprised me in terms of small moments that have crept onto the page, or in terms of the depth of emotions that my characters are experiencing and that I'm experiencing as a result of witnessing that. And it's coming out differently than I anticipated, but in a really good way. I've still pretty much stuck to my outline to a T, but it just feels different than I kind of expected. And watching the like mood and tone and impact of the book shift in this draft has been so cool and fulfilling. Also, hi, if you're new here, I jumped right into this vlog with very little introduction. Hi, I'm Brielle. I'm currently working on Unraveling, which is a dystopian fantasy novel. Picture the vibes of the dystopians that you know and love from the 2010s, Divergent, The Hunger Games, but make it an adult fantasy. So there's magic, there's a romance between our protagonist and the evil ruler's son, and this story follows an unlikely trio who journey to find some information to blackmail the ruler, only to uncover more secrets than they bargained for. Found family vibes, journey book, romance subplot, magical powers, lots going on. Okay, we're gonna get ice. I'm gonna finish off this matcha, and then we have even more to talk about. So I'll meet you by the bookcase with my matcha. See you there. Okay. Promise shelter, the walls were thin. Then carry me without caution. Something else, but I end up here. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the relationship between writing and reading and how my perception of that has kind of changed recently. The vehicle for this discussion, the thing that prompted this discussion, is this book, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. But this conversation kind of has nothing to do with this book, which we're gonna get into. Also, as you may have seen in the B-roll, I added a little cold foam to the top of my matcha. It's pumpkin pie cold foam. It's also not made the technically correct way. I just blended pumpkin pie spices with half and half, but it froths, it does the job. This book, I have not been captivated and brought in by a book like this in, frankly, an unknown amount of time. And it couldn't have come at a better time because I had just exited a reading slump where I had DNF'd 2 books in a row after not DNFing a book in like 2 years. And so needless to say, I was not liking what I was picking up to read, and it was really discouraging. It really had me down about writing in general. I was picking up a lot of contemporaries, a lot of contemporary romance, and I love a contemporary romance. I'm never going to be someone who looks down on any genre or type of reading. I'm a big believer that everyone should read what they want, and, you know, no books are better than other books just because they're more highbrow, whatever. I don't have any beef with contemporary romance. That being said, I was continually being disappointed by the books that I was choosing, and I just think I wasn't choosing very wisely. I wasn't putting a lot of thought into what I was picking up to read. I was honestly mainly aiming for quick reads, light reads, things that weren't going to pull me in too much because I really wanted to be focused on my writing. So I was picking up a lot of lighter contemporary books, thinking that that would be just easier reads than fantasy. And I was being continually disappointed. So this book was chosen for my book club, and I was not really sure what to expect going into it. And it just completely captivated me. And when you're a writer, I feel like there are certain books that you come across that just like change and shape you as a writer. And I feel like this book is one of those books for me. Not even necessarily because the prose style is like
exactly what I want to aim for, but it's kind of reminded me and also just woken me up to certain things that I love in books. There's so much that I love about this from an atmosphere perspective, from some of the visuals that she's crafting, and the characters. Like, the love interests in this book have really gotten my gears turning in terms of like the types of characters and love interests that I'm interested in writing, and really leaning into that. But I think this discussion goes way beyond the specifics of me just loving this specific book. I think it ties into reading as a writer in general and what that does and how it influences your writing practice. I think for a long time, I was viewing writing as pretty separate from my reading. I did notice the more that I was writing that the way that I read changed. I was thinking a lot more analytically as I was reading. I was noting things that I liked and didn't like in the book from a writing perspective. I was more aware of things like craft and structure and prose. But in general, I was keeping them pretty separate in my mind. And I wasn't choosing my reads from a writer's headspace. You know, I was choosing whatever looked fun at any given moment. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? But I think with this experience of falling in love with this book and then having some of the best writing days that I've ever had in the immediate aftermath of getting into this book and falling in love with it, it was a good lesson / reminder that you are what you eat in a lot of ways, and that's really true for media. And I think what you consume absolutely impacts you and how you show up to your writing practice. And I want to keep that in mind more when I'm selecting books that I'm reading. And that's not to say that I'm never going to just read books because they look fun or I feel like reading something light. I feel like reading a contemporary romance without thinking too much into it. But I want to be more mindful of including more books in my reading practice that I think might be a 5-star read, that I think aligns with the direction that I might want to go in terms of the type of writer that I want to be, or that might influence or inspire me in a new way, make me think about books and story in a new way. And literally, as I was writing in Minnesota, like in the aftermath of reading some of this book, I felt actively the way that it was influencing the way that I was crafting sentences and scenes. And there were multiple prose moments where I was like, let me try to do something a little bit more like V. Schwab's style, you know, like, let me see if I can do something cool with the sentence. And of course, I was being very mindful of staying true to my voice and the project's voice. But it was cool to see those little influences and little bits of inspiration working its way into my project and working its way into my writing. And I don't think it's any coincidence that I had such amazing writing days in the immediate aftermath of consuming something that I felt really passionate about, that I was so inspired by, but also that I just genuinely thought was well written and felt like I was learning from on a craft perspective. And it was making me think about sentences differently and imagery differently and push myself a little bit in that department. And what you read as a writer does matter. And I want to consume stuff that I view as like aspirational or like just really well done, because it makes you realize what's possible with story and it keeps you from settling, you know, and it makes you want to strive to be better. And I think that that's really powerful. I wonder if one of the reasons that I was honestly not reaching for these kinds of books was because I was scared that reading something that I viewed as really good would freak me out in some way, make me scared to write or more nervous to write. But it had the opposite effect. It made me eager to write. There were multiple times where I went straight from reading that book to writing because I was so inspired and so enthusiastic. And it's awesome to see that. I don't think I'm going to be like scared to pick up any books anymore. I want to seek out stuff that I think I'm going to love, like capital L love, not just stuff that I'm like going into with the mindset of, oh, it'll probably be a 3-star. And it's just a little palate cleanser book. Because for a while, that's how I was reading. And I was reading a lot of 3-star books. Like that's been kind of the norm for me this year, where I've just been reading things that I was underwhelmed by. And I just kind of got into that rhythm and that habit. And I want to stretch a little bit more. And you are what you eat. If you want to write in a certain way, it's good to read in that way too, you know? And that's not to say that you can't have wild card books that you just pick up because they look like a fun time, even if they're not necessarily what you're trying to achieve with your own writing. But I think it's important to at least have a balance there and be mindful about the fact that if you're never reading things that are really like inspiring or aspirational, then all of what you're consuming is stuff that you're not really trying to match. And then you're fighting an uphill battle. You know, it's a lot easier if what you're consuming and what you're feeding your brain is what you're hoping to produce, you know? Because that's an aspect too, is like the words in your brain, the turns of phrase in your brain, the sentence structures in your brain, all of that comes from what you've consumed. It's that thing of like nothing's original, everything you create is a product of the things you've consumed. If that's the case, then we all need to be like feeding ourselves things that are going to help us write in the way we want to write, right? Even from reading this book, I was writing down things in my notes app that I like wanted to do with future projects. Like it was inspiring on that level, not just in a vague way, in a very active, oh, this makes me think about this thing that I want to try doing. Or, oh, I love how she did this. Like that's such an amazing vehicle to create a story through, whatever. Like seeing that sort of active inspiration of something influencing me so directly and clearly and tangibly, I just felt the different energy that I brought to my writing after reading this and experiencing this. And it's something that I'm going to keep in mind a lot more through the rest of the year. I already started planning out a lot of my TBR for the rest of the year to be full of books that I think are going to actually really help me like hone in on the writer that I want to be. Some ones that I have coming up for sure. Sunrise on the Reaping is on the TBR, of course. Local Heavens, Chris's book, is definitely going to be read as soon as I get my copy. I want to read One Dark Window. I just want to be reading stuff that really is inspiring, Now I think we're going to go get ready to go to my usual cafe to do our writing for the day.
Okay, we're gonna pick out a cute little outfit for our trip to the cafe, and we have quite some options to choose from. Thank you so much to my friends over at Quince for sending me some clothes to keep me serving some cute looks at my regular coffee shops. So we're gonna try on some of these outfits and pick something out for today. If you're not familiar, Quince is a brand that is redefining luxury by offering high-quality essentials at accessible prices. They believe in making premium fashion, home goods, and wellness products affordable without compromising on quality, ethics, or sustainability. By cutting out the middleman and working directly with high-quality manufacturers, they're able to provide products made with the finest materials at a fraction of traditional retail prices. And let's go ahead and try some on. All right, our first little combo is honestly a very classic Brielle fit. We have the Power Up high-rise training short, which is like a bike short. The quality feels so good. It is so buttery. And then this is the Ultra Form high neck cropped tank. This is gonna get a lot of wear. Definitely a contender for the coffee shop. We do have some other basics, so let's go through all of those first. Now this is the Ultra Form bike short. Both bike shorts are really nice. They're different vibes. If you want something that's a little bit more like second skin, this is gonna be the one. If you want something that feels a little bit more compression and like thick, I would recommend the Power Up one. Next, we have the Stretch Cotton Jersey Boat Neck Tank. I love this. The cut is really cute, and I feel like this is like a dressier black tank top, even like for going out for dinner with like a little skirt. Yeah. Next up, this is the 100% European linen strapless top in blue pinstripe, giving I'm on vacation. I could see myself wearing this like all of next summer. And what I appreciate, I feel like strapless tops are often so hard to wear because you feel like they're constantly falling down. There's like a really thick elastic here that's going to keep this up, which I love. Then these are the 100% organic cotton poplin pull-on shorts. Here's the look of these. The material feels amazing. They're so comfortable, but they feel high quality and still like dressy. I'm honestly blown away by the quality of all this clothes. Like every piece feels good. It feels high quality, but it feels comfortable. And that's like a very difficult balance, honestly, to strike and to find. So Quince, I'm impressed. I'm very impressed. All right, this next set, I have no notes. No notes. This is the 100% European linen long sleeve shirt and wide leg pant in the pattern chambray stripe. I'm obsessed with this. So comfortable, so wearable. This is exactly how I'd wear it with like a little black tank top underneath. Again, I feel like perfect for a vacation. I could see myself wearing a ton of this in the fall as well. The washable stretch V-neck cami in aqua pearl. This color. Material feels great, as has been the case with everything that I've tried on so far. Okay, this is what I've settled on for the cafe. The Ultraform tank top and shorts, and then the European linen long sleeve. It's comfy, it's cute, I feel classy. I don't normally feel like sophisticated, but something about the materials and the quality and the cuts of these clothes makes me feel sophisticated. Thank you again to Quince for sending me all these pieces. I will have the link down below for everything that I tried on if you liked any of the pieces and wanted to snag them for yourself. And yeah, let's head out to the cafe. Can't wait to show off my new threads.
Could you catch me up here? Tell me what you felt
Hi, okay, writing update, very uncomfortably filming very publicly right now, so we're gonna keep this kind of brief. We ended up spending just about 2 hours at the cafe. You know what's crazy is that it felt like I was there for 5 minutes, and this is something that I feel like I've talked about a lot with writing friends, especially recently, is how writing just consumes time. And obviously writing is a great use of time. It doesn't feel like a waste of time at all, but it does consume time. An hour passes in a blink. 2 hours passes in a blink. And I don't really feel like I felt this way when I started writing. It very much felt like spending a long time in front of the computer was difficult. But now it feels like the time slips away. It slips through my fingers and I'm just like somewhere else. Like my mind is somewhere else. It's really hard for me to talk to someone. If someone like interrupts me in a writing zone, like, and tries to speak to me, I'm not really there, you know. It's really hard for me to pull myself out of it because it's consuming. I think that's part of the reason why sometimes I can struggle to really feel the extent of my progress, is because it feels like so many hours can like slip away. Like, yes, I literally wrote for 2 hours, like locked in for 2 hours, but at the same time, it feels like I didn't even write today, or like my writing today was so brief and so minimal. And that's just crazy, you know, because what other task really feels that way, where it's like the time just slips? I don't know. It's very interesting to experience. I'm going to go for a walk in the park because I try to do this every single evening right before sunset. Get a little movement in, see the great outdoors. And then I'm thinking I'm going to pick up like a pumpkin cream cold brew and go home and keep writing if I can. Depends on kind of what's going on with my boyfriend, obviously. Try to spend time with him in the evenings. But if he has stuff to do, I might try to get a little more writing in, because frankly, it doesn't feel like I did much. A 2-hour lock-in did nothing. It's a lot harder for me to like see and acknowledge progress when it's not super obvious. Like in this case, I was kind of revising and working on the last few scenes instead of pushing forward plot-wise. So it's a lot harder for me to kind of like see and acknowledge that progress, even though it's just as valid and valuable. And I think I need to rewire my brain around that. I think it goes back to that like old mindset of like, unless the word count's going up, progress isn't being made. And that's just not the mindset I want to have. You know, anytime I spend working on the book is progress, and I need to acknowledge that, even if things don't actually feel like they're moving forward. Time spent thinking about reading, looking at the book is valuable in itself. I'm trying not to be impatient. I'm trying to give the manuscript the time and attention it needs. It's hard because I'm so eager. Another huge part of where I'm at with writing right now that I haven't really touched on yet in this vlog, because I was kind of more so focused on how I was feeling in the past couple weeks about writing, is that my relationship with writing is going to have to shift again, because for July and August, I had the complete and absolute privilege, and June, actually, June, July, and August, I had the complete and absolute privilege of working a lot less and writing a lot more. I really hit the gas with writing in a way that I haven't been able to ever before. And it was magical and awesome to have writing as like my top priority for those months. But things are shifting again now, and I'm starting to take on more work again. My summer of writing super intensely has come to a close. I'm back in grind mode with my work, and as a result, I need to like find and rediscover how to make meaningful and substantial writing progress without it being the main thing in my life. Like, I'm going to have to relearn how to fit it around deadlines and other priorities. And that's a little daunting to me, to be honest. I'm a little bit scared that my writing progress is going to fall to zero. And I just really don't want that to happen right now, because I'm in the home stretch of this draft and I want to get it to beta readers in the next like month or two. So basically I have to relearn how to fit in writing when it's not the main priority. And I know that I can do it. I've done it before, but I have to have a certain level of acceptance and understanding that getting my writing in might look and feel different than it has the last couple months, because things are shifting again. And I have to be okay with that. I need to give myself like grace and understanding as I recalibrate what that balance looks like, because in just the first few days of me trying to get back into more of a grind mindset with my work, I've had a lot of issues with just feeling perpetually like I'm not doing enough, you know? So that's something I'm going to have to like rework on, I guess. I think it's important to remember that your creative process cannot only exist in ideal situations and ideal circumstances. Like, sure, it might be my dream scenario to always be writing on a writing retreat or always be writing with nothing else on my plate and just endless time to work on the book and only think about the book. That might be an ideal situation, but that's not real life, right? One day it might be what my life looks like, that writing is the main priority. But for now, at least, that's not my typical reality. And so I think it's important to remember that you don't need perfect circumstances to be creative and to make creative progress and work on your creative projects. It's great when those perfect circumstances are given to you and you get the gift of that ideal situation. But other times you're going to be fitting it in around other things, and you're going to be feeling like you keep falling out of the project and having to pull yourself back in just because of life circumstances and other work that you have to do. And you don't have to be in a perfect situation to make good creative work. And this is something that I know I'm going to have to continually remind myself of and continually relearn, because it's really easy sometimes to feel like, oh, I got to wait till I have a completely free day or week or whatever to really sink back into this project. But progress can be made in the little moments, in the in-betweens, in the session that you're able to squeeze in the evening, you know? And I think that's an important reminder too. Anyway, I'm going to sign off for this vlog. If you made it all the way to the end, comment down below a blue book emoji. Thanks for catching up with me today. It felt really good to just take you along for a day and catch up, talk about all the things. I'll see you very soon with another writing update. Until then, happy writing. Bye.